UConn women in the Sweet 16 for the 31st straight season. Yes, you heard me right. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate your support and we're forever grateful for it. Absolutely love the subscribers we're getting on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed, do so now. We're getting closer to 11,000 subscribers. We'd love to hit that plateau before this season is over. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn men's and women's basketball programs, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. Okay, UConn dominates South Dakota State, and it's a statement that was made in stores. They make their 31st consecutive Sweet 16. They didn't just punch their ticket. They did it with force, and they did it with defense. A 91-57 dismantling of the number 10 seed South Dakota State showed exactly why this UConn team has reemerged as a serious national title contender over the last few weeks. You heard Rebecca Lobo last night. The two teams that are playing their best basketball right now are UConn and South Carolina, a potential national championship matchup that could be a rematch of a game that UConn dismantled the Gamecocks by 29 points in Columbia, breaking their 71 game home win streak. But after a shaky opening few minutes, the Huskies really found the rhythm. And once they did, the Jackrabbits had no answers. They run a really great offense. I was super impressed with how they were able to get open looks, and really They were game. You know, for about a quarter and a half, they looked like a team that was going to keep it close. But as I've said to friends and family off the air and people that are, you know, lifetime UConn fans, this team, when they start to play the defense that they play, it really kind of shows the difference in talent, because a 5-point lead mushrooms to 15, and then a 15-point lead mushrooms to 30. At one point, I think it was 44 was the most they led by, and they win by 34 points. So let's set the scene. UConn missed its first 7 shots and trailed 10-4 midway through the first quarter. It looked like the nerves, maybe some pressure from the magnitude of the moment. But as sophomore Ashlyn Shade said in a post-game interview, we just wanted it so bad. Sometimes when you want something that bad, you start to overdo it. Fair enough. And then from that moment on, the floodgates open. As I mentioned, exponential runs. They responded with a 16-2 run led by Paige Bueckers going on a solo 10-0 stretch. Paige was amazing. We'll get to her in a second. To close the quarter, she knocked down pull-up jumpers, drove the lane, hit a buzzer-beating 3 that turned Gampel Pavilion into a madhouse. But it wasn't just Paige. It was a team-wide defensive masterpiece. UConn forced 14 turnovers in the first half alone, converting them into 25 points. They were flying around the court, led by KK Arnold, disrupting passing lanes and creating offensive fouls against her. Sarah Strong altering shots, blocking shots. Azzi Fudd locking in on the perimeter. If it wasn't for 2 fouls from her, that kind of were shaky ticky-tack calls, I think she would have had an even bigger game than she did. By the time halftime hit, UConn had a 15-point lead, and they weren't done. They opened the third quarter on a 23-3 run, turning the game into a clinic. Sarah Strong was everywhere. 15 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, a typical stat stuffer game for the electric freshman from the North Carolina area. She didn't even notch a double-double for once, but absolutely dominated in every aspect of the floor. Azzi Fudd came alive in the second half, knocking down 3 triples, finishing with 17 points despite early foul trouble. And defensively, we saw the Jackrabbits were smothered. We talked about this in the pregame show yesterday. Season high 22 turnovers for them. This is the team that hadn't lost. The number 22 stuck in my head. This is a team that hasn't lost since December 22nd, since before Christmas. And they were made into a team that was looking for answers. They just made 3 field goals in the third quarter. And what we saw on Monday night was UConn at full throttle. Overwhelming on defense, efficient on offense, and the Paige Bueckers that some of you guys have really called for. She took this, was that meme, and I took that personally with Michael Jordan looking at the iPad. Paige almost looked like someone said to her before the game, you had a great season, you're efficient and everything like that, but can you just ever take over? Can't you just ever do that? Like, just show us what you can do. And she said, okay, hold my beer, whatever meme you want to use. And she was absolutely dominant in every facet: pull-up game, three-point game, driving, reverse layups. She even tried a couple like fadeaway one-legged shots. I think she was all in her bag. This was a message. I say that kind of quite a bit with this team, and I know people are going to say, well, they was a 10 seed, blah, blah. This is a 30-win team. You can call them whatever they want, mid-major, they don't play in a big conference. Who cares? This team was game. They had a good game plan set up. They drew UConn into some deep waters. They had some good post presence, and they just couldn't sustain it. Now, they're going to play an Oklahoma team that can sustain it a little longer, likely a similar scenario where they keep it close for a while and UConn will push ahead. They're going to Spokane next to play that 3-seed Oklahoma with a trip to the Elite Eight on the line. Let me just shout out this. The performance at Gampel wasn't just about basketball. It was also kind of a farewell to Paige and Aubrey and this team that hasn't really struggled this year, but has felt much maligned because they're kind of this team that is trying to do something that hasn't been done in pretty much a decade here at UConn, which is to win a national championship, which is not a long stretch. But in women's college basketball, it feels like, the Cubs who haven't won a World Series in 100 years. I think that's part of why this fan base is so passionate, is because we expect the standard to be this, and UConn definitely set that. But one of the biggest sparks that ignited this entire UConn turnaround from down 10-4 against South Dakota State, KK Arnold. She had a defensive intensity that completely shifted the game's momentum. And to Ashlyn Shade's point, she said, sometimes when you want something, you overdo it. Well, KK Arnold did the opposite. Sometimes when you want something, you have to take it. And she took it. She didn't even score a point in the first half. And she was probably the most impactful player of that first half in the respect of what she kind of emoted for her players, for her teammates, and how that kind of showed on the court. When UConn was behind early, it was her ball pressure, her ability to disrupt passing lanes that jump-started this UConn run. And she may not fill the box score with steals every night, but her presence at the point of attack flusters opposing guards. It speeds up offenses. One of the things that coaches talk about is you can't dictate to the defense, and you can't speed up just because they pressure you. Well, KK flips the script on that, and she gets people to speed up. And it creates the chaos that leads to fast break points, deflections, that leads to runouts for Sarah Strong and Paige Bueckers. Gino Auriemma has often called Arnold one of the most competitive players he's ever coached, and you saw why on Monday night. Her energy on the perimeter helped set the tone for the rest of the team, and once she locked in, the Huskies followed suit. As we mentioned, next up is the Oklahoma Sooners in Spokane, and this is the second time a UConn team, the men, beat Oklahoma in the first round of the NCAA tournaments before they bowed out against Florida. UConn will play Oklahoma in Spokane in the Sweet 16. And I don't know if you guys saw this. If this is the first time you're hearing it, I don't think I'm breaking any news here. Absolute unfortunate business of Juju Watkins' ACL tear with USC Trojans on the other side of the bracket last night. The awful news of that is, if you're a fan of the women's game, you want to see the Elite Eight with UConn versus USC. It's probably still going to happen, but with less star power. I caution you this. That team looked very didn't even feel like they were shell-shocked. I mean, personally, they're going through it now, knowing that she's going to be out for the year with the ACL tear. We wish her all the best. I hope she comes back even stronger next year. Obviously, you don't have to tell any of UConn fans about what ACL tears and injuries do to a team. And I would say, let me say that UConn has won games they probably shouldn't because of other players stepping up, and USC has the talent on their bench to be without Juju. I don't know if they can beat UConn with it, but I hope this team doesn't go in and say, well, Juju is out, so it's an automatic bid to the Final Four. But the bracket is there now for the taking. It always was. But now, without losing their leading scorer, their best player, this UConn women's squad should be the favorite to get to the Final Four in this bracket if they weren't already. Here's a friend of the program, Chelsea Sherrod, interviewing Gino about Paige. Actually, we're going to talk about that after the break. Stay with us so you can see that quick little minute 20 when he was talking about her farewell. And then we're going to get into Paige and what last night meant to UConn fans and how beautiful it was that she got to speak to the crowd after the game. We're going to talk about that after the break. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada clear-cut Team of the Week is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Despite losing their first 5 SEC games, Coach Cal's Hogs fought their way through the most rugged conference in college basketball on the men's side to not only make the NCAA tournament, but knock off back-to-back national champion and Hall of Fame coaches en route to the Sweet 16. They accomplished all this without the second leading scorer, Boogie Fland, for the most of the SEC play, and without leading scorer and rebounder, Adou Thiero, so far in the NCAA tournament. When it comes to Nissan Armada, they say, go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Arkansas Razorbacks have done. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any Nissans and outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. Dominant performance last night. And here was, as promised, our friend Chelsea Sherrod talking to Gino post-game about Paige.
Coach Paige Bueckers' last game at Gampel, and she does that. It seemed like the hoop was like 10 times the size when she was shooting into it. How special of a player is she, and how nice was it to see her go out the way that she did here?
Yeah, every single player that goes to college hopes and dreams that, you know, their last game and they're on their home court is one of the best games of their career, and it means a lot. The big moment and everything you've prepared for. So I think Paige was rewarded for all the work she's put in since she's been here, how much she loves the game, and sometimes kids hope they get rewarded. Sometimes kids work really, really hard and they don't get rewarded. And I think in this case, you know, I've not met anybody who works harder, loves the game more, spends more time in the gym. So her time in front of Connecticut fans ended exactly the way it's supposed to end, and I'm really happy for her with that.
Just a really great tribute to Paige there from Gino Auriemma. He got a little emotional. We don't have that. When she walked out of the press conference, you know, probably hitting him that this was the last time that she was going to, be doing exactly what she did, at least in Gampel, right? And there's no real way to fully describe what Paige Bueckers means to UConn. But Monday night, we came close. It was likely her final game at Gampel, and it's not likely. It was her final game at Gampel. Paige delivered her most efficient performance of the season, tying her career high with 34 points on 14 of 21 shooting with 4 steals, 4 assists, and countless jaw-dropping moments, including some fadeaways where she kind of hung in the air. And it reminded me of when I went and saw them in Greensboro. And the first thought I had about seeing her in person for the first time was she moves differently than the players on the court that she plays against. She has a floating quality where it almost feels like everyone else has cement in their shoes and she's just out there on ice skates. And that to me is the best way to describe her. She plays at a different speed. She's not like the fastest person on the court, but she kind of, and what I mean by that is if you ever watch hockey or you ever watch ice skating, the way someone can manipulate their movement with ice skates, it's like fast and then they slow down, and it's almost balletic. And so her footwork is amazing. And what made it special wasn't just the final stat line. It was the setting. The same player who debuted during the eerie silence of the COVID season, playing in front of cardboard cutouts and piped in crowd noise, finally got a true to form Gampel pavilion moment in front of the fans. She was quoted at the end of the game saying, "I remember the fake crowd noise, the cardboard cutouts. People were paying to have their faces in the stands, and there were dogs and animals too." She said, it just makes you extremely grateful. It should also make all of us extremely grateful that we all went through that time where we couldn't, even if we had all the means in the world, money was no object to go to games, but you couldn't, right? And so you should always be grateful that you get the opportunity to go to these games, because they don't last forever. That's why it's called, those are moments in time, and try to stay present and really focus on what you're watching versus the frustration of maybe you bet on the game. Maybe you are frustrated because you think they should be doing something different. Try to center yourself and focus on what you're watching. I had a great this is like the third time I've shouted him out. I don't know if he'll ever watch this, but Josh Graham is a radio host here in North Carolina on WSJS. You can check out their show online, I'm sure. He's a great radio host. He's been doing it for 6 or 7 years down here. Great perspective. He's a new dad. I think he's been recently married, so he's full of all the hope and optimism that an old, almost 44-year-old guy doesn't have, or tries to have a little bit of. And he said to me, because I got to sit courtside for the men's game, right behind Grant Hill and Bill Raftery and Ian Eagle doing the game. So I don't know if you saw me on TV, that's why. And Josh said, "Hey, do me a favor. I'm going to tell you something that someone told me. With your phone and your laptop, I know we're working." He's like, "But remember, you're courtside watching UConn in an NCAA tournament game." And so for the entire second half, I literally just took it all in as a fan. Was still able to ask good questions and write notes down and stuff like that at TV timeouts, but he was right. And so this is what this reminded me of. Because on Monday, it was a complete opposite from the COVID times. A sold-out crowd of 10,299, deafening at times, so loud that Paige couldn't even hear the referee's whistle. She was showered with love when she checked out with 3 minutes left, and after the game, mic in hand, talking to the crowd. She said, "I've had the time of my life here. Thank you for making this my second home." And yes, she wasn't emotional, not yet. She was quoted as saying, and said this to the crowd, "I haven't had a wave or rush of emotions hit me yet. We're so locked in and focused on the task at hand. I'm sure we'll have time to reflect when the season is over. But right now we're focused on the present." Very good perspective from Paige Bueckers. Gino, though, was thinking about the moment when he subbed her back in the fourth. It wasn't to chase points. It wasn't to give her a proper send-off. He is quoted as saying, "I wanted her to feel what it's like to come off the court one last time, to that appreciation from the fans." I thought that was beautiful. Teammates like Caitlin Chen and Aubrey Griffin, who also played their final Gampel games, echoed the sentiment. It was Paige's last Gampel game. She had to go off right, Chen said. She was, and from Aubrey Griffin, she was just doing all of the Paige things. And she was, because when it mattered, when UConn needed a spark, we talked about KK Arnold, but offensively, Bueckers provided it. Not with drama, not with theatrics, but with poise, power, and precision. In her words, I wasn't thinking, I was going with the flow. Well, if that's the flow, I hope we continue to see that the rest of the year. What she's given this program isn't just highlight reels or points. It's a legacy. And she, as she likes to quote Kobe Bryant all the time, rest in peace. Job's not done. We'll be right back.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Get supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. With over 200,000 products from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need for plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, delivered fast and nationwide. Their easy-to-use site is packed with resources, real-time support, and expert service to help you get the job done right. And if you're a pro, join their free Trade Master program for exclusive perks like free shipping and dedicated support lines and a discount on every order. Sign up at supplyhouse.com/TM and use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn, last segment of the program. Can't talk about this game without talking about Azzi Fudd and the evolution from, her being Princess Azzi to now being just this absolute sniper that's a postseason problem. If you're looking for signs that Azzi Fudd is ready for a deep tournament run, look no further than what we saw against Arkansas State. In just 22 minutes, Fudd dropped 27 points, knocked down 6 threes, dished out a career-high 7 assists, and tied her personal best in steals with 6 and blocks with 2. It was easily one of the most complete performances of her UConn career, and it felt like a moment of arrival. However, what was lovely about the game last night is that she didn't start off great. She missed a few shots, but in the second half, Paige was trying to find her, and really because I think they want to keep her in that rhythm. And she did hit 3 straight threes in the third and fourth quarter where she got herself open. She also looked great going to the hole. Like she feels faster, stronger. And part of this segment is really kind of the challenge that she's telling to Gino that, listen, I'm not a baby. I don't need to be babied with minutes, and I'm fine. She laughed about that because their relationship has been built on mutual respect. And, I think what's funny is she's ready to kind of break out. She's going to have an incredible rest of the NCAA tournament because, yes, were we all focused on Paige last night because she had 34 points and had this amazing bidding farewell to Gampel. Azzi could be coming back. Bob Joyce, who does the radio play-by-play for the UConn Huskies, kind of intimated that she gave them a kind of a wry smile when they asked her about that postgame. So who knows? Maybe Azzi is coming back for her final year. Her nickname was always inside the program, the Princess, a moniker popularized by Paige on Sue Bird's show. It was a joke, but it carried a grain of truth. Azzi rarely found herself on the receiving end of Gino's famous kind of like ire, where he will just rip into a player. But that's changed this year because she's asked for it. Like, that's the challenge. And that's why this segment is titled Azzi's Challenge, because, she told him earlier in the year, like, yell at me, be tough on me. I want that. Just because I've been hurt and because, people have called me the princess doesn't mean that, I need to feel that kind of kick in the ass every once in a while to get going. So that growth, that hunger is what you're seeing on the court come to fruition in the second round game and the first game against Arkansas State. She's been on an absolute mission since the Big East tournament to prove that she is back to 100% in full strength. And it's that confidence. It's the body language. It's the way she's carrying herself. Even the way she runs, her gait is different. She doesn't feel hesitant. Her willingness to take over games, it's all there. If the jumper's not there, she takes to the hole. She had a couple great reverse layups last night and really is using her physicality. If people forget, she's a big guard. She's not frail by any shape of the imagination. When she takes contact, she still can, score through contact. And that's what I love about her game and how it's evolving. Paige was saying we have all the trust in the world in her. She makes it look so easy. I just got to sit back and enjoy the Paige show and now the Azzi show too. Gino summed it up best. She's big, she's strong, she's athletic, and she's coming for you. And that's what I love about this team. I didn't even say much about Sarah Strong. She might be the best player on this team that has Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd. That's what's so crazy about this team and what gets me excited about watching them. As UConn eyes a showdown with Oklahoma and a possible trip to the Elite Eight with the Juju-less USC Trojans, Azzi Fudd could be the X factor on offense. Defensively, KK Arnold, absolute menace out there. I loved what you did. Sarah Strong was phenomenal last night. Would love to see a little more from Ashlyn Shade. She had one of those nights where her jumper wasn't falling, and very similarly to Alex Karaban on the men's side, she has kind of a flat shot where it's not a ton of arc. And when she's on fire, it's like, the hoop is 100 feet wide. But when she's off, she could look porous because there's a little less margin for error based off the fact she doesn't have a ton of arc on her shot. I still love her fire, her ability her willingness to take jumpers off the dribble. Caitlin Chen was her usual steady self. So this team is not unbeatable, but when Azzi Fudd, I said this last night to my father before the game, when Azzi Fudd scores and she scores in bunches, they pretty much are. So be looking for that as the time goes on. We hope you enjoyed the show today. That's another episode of Locked On UConn. Later this afternoon, we'll have a transfer portal episode for the UConn men, a list of players that to look for, some that I know have already been contacted, some that may not even be in the portal yet. But all that's coming this afternoon, and we're going to continue following the UConn women as they march toward their 16th out of 17th year Final Four and potentially their 12th national championship. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For Mark Zanetto here at Locked On, we hope you stay locked on, stay connected with us. And remember, it's not about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that it can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. Thank you, Gino, for that quote. I'm going to use that one forever. Go Huskies.